everyone. I am returning to David Bowie today, and this is going to be Space Oddity. Well, I've listened to one of his other pieces, that is Warszawa, and I enjoyed that one a lot. It was beautiful. I remember one of the things that was really special to me was the way he incorporated traditional musical influences, choral influences within the piece. And then the other exposure I've had is his partnership, his collaboration with Queen when they did Under Pressure, and that was a lot of fun too. So today it's going to be Space Oddity. Space Oddity was first released on the 11th of July 1969, and it is one of the most musically complex songs Bowie had written up to that point. It represented a change from the music hall-influenced sound of his debut to a sound akin to psychedelic folk and inspired by the Bee Gees. Rush released as a single to capitalize on the Apollo 11 moon landings. Oh, okay. It received critical praise and was used by the BBC as background music during its coverage of the event. Okay, what a nice way of getting your piece, your recent release, suddenly out in the public eye and linked to a specific event. Initially viewed as a novelty track, Space Oddity is now considered one of Bowie's finest recordings and remains one of his most popular songs. It has appeared in numerous best-of lists, including the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. Let's see, what is this Space Oddity all about?
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirt you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today.
Okay, this is funny. It's there's something kind of probably intentionally so. Sounds a bit contrived. Meaning, not that it's a bad thing, not that it's a negative reflection on the music, but it's kind of like this is not trying to portray it in a natural way. It's almost a kind of cartoonish representation of the whole experience. It reminds me a bit, actually, of something like Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals. There's something about it that it captures a quality and essence, but at the same time, it's done with a little twist of humor. And the place where I first noticed it was the first ground control to Major Tom. Because think about it. Ground control to Major Tom. Who's going to be speaking to Major Tom from ground control in that way? Such a ground control to Major Tom. I mean, come on. This is kind of funny. And then after we have this multiple voices, ground control to Major Tom, I start to think, okay, what's happening here? And it's not just that it's telling me that this is going to be a little bit of a humorous twist on things, but when you listen to that line, dum da 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 dum ba dee dum, it's already kind of anticipating the gravityless experience of space. Dum ba da 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 da. Even before takeoff. And then after you hear that, you hear, take your protein pills and put your helmet on. And that was the moment I immediately thought of Saint-Saëns, the fantasy. Because within that, no, why did I say the fantasy? Where did that come from? The Carnival of the Animals. Don't know what happened there. Right in the middle of the Carnival of the Animals, which is about animals. We have the elephant, we have the swan and everything. Right in the middle of it, there is, of all creatures, the pianist. And the pianist is represented as practicing incredibly boring technical exercises and doing it badly. The way he's written it out, dee, 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 it's dull. It sounds like a student who has no musical imagination, and there are wrong notes written into the score intentionally to make it sound bad. And then I hear, take your protein pills and put your helmet on. And that's what made me connect the two together. Whether it really makes sense to connect them, I don't know, but it did in my mind. And then the idea, take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Go through the motions, go down the checklist, bum, 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 in a rather mechanical, technical manner. Make sure everything is checked off exactly as it ought to be. There's no sense of excitement here, no sense of trepidation, no sense of anticipation. And so it's this juxtaposition of these two. Ground control to Major Tom. And then, take your protein pills and put your helmet on. That's what set the whole mood of the piece for me. And then, of course, we hear ground control to Major Tom, and the countdown starts, it's a nice idea, mixing the two, and commencing countdown, engines on, check ignition. And then I loved the moment where it said, and may God's love lift off, be with you. The way the two were timed was just great. And then, of course, we come to the verses. And still, it has this quirky bit of humor. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, as if ground control is going to be grading you, approving, telling you you're doing a great job. Come on, it's ground control. They're talking, but and the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. Okay, now we're talking about some down on earth gossip. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. I mean, mixing all these things together, it is funny, and it strikes me as incredibly funny. Next verse. This is Major Tom to ground control. This is the first time we hear Major Tom speaking. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way. The way they sing most peculiar way, however he did it, I stumble over it, makes it peculiar, makes it, again, funny, kind of exaggerating the moment. and the stars look very different today. This feeling of every little corner of the word, every syllable, every consonant is somehow something new and fresh to be noticed. Just as when you step out the door in such a momentous, incredible experience, and the idea that every little detail, not only does it sound different or look different, but it's worth noticing, and you kind of feel it in a strange, beginner-style way. Like a child who's learning to speak and is playing or even just learning to stack blocks. Well, I have a little child right now, and I watch her stacking blocks and pushing buttons, and every little sensation is something to be experienced and relished and immersed in and done over and over again. And so that's how this most peculiar way and very different today strikes me as kind of expressing that. All of this in kind of a, well, there's the sort of space-like background instrumentals. Well, I need to finish listening to the song. That all just had to come out. So let's keep going. I'll back up just a little bit to get back into it.
Floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very
And the strings in the background.
today. For here am I sitting in a tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do.
And things like this, where you start thinking, oh yes, this sounds like it could be an illustration, an expression. You feel the spaciness of it. You feel the spaceship floating through space and the stars and the whole space quality, and then boom, 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 boom. Where did that come from? Are we hitting the ground already? There are these funny little insertions in the music. Doesn't this paint a great picture in your mind? What is that?
Though I'm past 100,000 miles, I'm feeling very scared, and I think my spaceship knows which way to go. Tell my wife I love her very much. She knows.
She knows.
Ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead. There's something wrong. Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear? Am I floating on my tin can? Far above the world.
Well, I think the BBC had somebody with a brilliant sense of humor to use that as the music, the background music during their coverage of the Apollo 11 moon landing event. I mean, that's great. Something entirely non-serious. And we finished by hearing them floating around in the tin can with nothing to do, and something's wrong, and that's just how it ends. You know, in that last verse, here I am floating around in my tin can far above the moon, planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do, and then we start hearing the guitar plucking away, and I felt like the guitar was in that moment Major Tom, sitting up there with nothing to do, and if he were to have a guitar, he'd just be strumming kind of aimlessly, randomly, because how else do I fill my time? It is quite a... I guess I could use the word complex piece of music, simply because there are so many different musical elements, so many different portions of it which are really unique in their own setup. I was thinking, in a way, it's kind of like Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, because it has so many different sections, and each one has its own world of design. There are places where you hear it floating in space. There are places where you hear bits of humor. There are places where, let's see, maybe it was here I am floating around my tin can, or maybe it was though I'm past 100,000 miles and I'm feeling very still. One of those verses. The flute, and the violin, you know, it brought to mind another classical piece, and that is the Moldau. The Moldau, Smetana's Moldau, is a piece of music which is about the river, the Moldau River, and it starts at the source, and you hear two flutes, and it's representing the two small streams that gradually travel down the mountainside and converge and become one stream, which then grows, and then you hear the whole travel. This kind of had that same feeling, a little flute, and then the violin traveling, but this time they weren't traveling towards each other. They were traveling apart, and it was a great moment of kind of painting another picture, this time not just floating through space, like the strings in the background. Neither is it the funny, quirky little sonic insertions, but the idea that there's such a vast separation, and there's this feeling of lightness and delicacy. I mean, the whole thing is really quite a delicate operation when you think about it. All the technical elements that have to go just right. But somehow I felt like that bit of flute and violin traveling, flute fluttering here, was such a great musical commentary on the whole experience. So, to me, it's quirky, it's humorous. I don't know if I would quite call it cartoonish, but in a way it is. And at the same time, well, it's a way of kind of bringing up the deepest fears. Are they going to make it back okay? And at the same time, presenting it in a way that's lighthearted and playful, and it's inconclusive. We don't hear how things worked out in the end. It does have a kind of a pleasant sound to it as well. It doesn't feel haphazard, hodgepodge, patched together. There is a continuity, and overall a very easy, calm feel. Well, if you know what you're doing, and you trust everybody who's had a finger in the pie, you can sit back and be calm and, kind of trust yourself to your fate, I suppose. Really a fun listen. I guess I wouldn't have been able to pinpoint this as David Bowie if I had been asked to play a guessing game. First of all, I don't know enough of David Bowie's music. Second of all, this is very different from Warszawa, and so it's another perspective on his music and composition. I'm sure there's a lot more to discover, so we'll do more of that in the future. I'll see you soon.